continuous integration. So as I said before, we know by now that we have GitHub on the cloud.
Oh.
Question? Okay, so we know GitHub is in the cloud, and what is the cloud? Well, there's a server on the cloud where our source code is stored, okay? And then we know we have to download the source code to our computer.
I am sorry, but
you're gonna have to wait, okay? If you can't find the quiz, it's not available anymore, so I'll have to make it available. But let me get through this section, okay?
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we download, and then when we make changes, we upload. One thing I've always been saying is check in working source code. But how, like, there's what, 20 students, so how am I going to check that? And just imagine there's 20 programmers working on a software program. How do they keep the integrity of checking in source code that works? Well, this is a server, and this server has C++ installed on it. And with Git, there's some commands that you call to use the compiler to build the code, meaning check it for errors, create the executable for main, and for the test cases. And then after that, it runs the test cases. So if I look at your code and it's not running the test cases because there's issues with your code, then I know right away that something's wrong. So when does this message get sent to C++ compiler? Every single time you make a check-in to GitHub, meaning you upload your source code from your computer to GitHub, the server is like, oh, student A has submitted new source code. Let me run the application, let me build it, let me create the executable, for test, and then let me run the test cases. Okay, that's what happens. So let me show you my repository so that you can see how GitHub helps us do that. So notice here there's a green check mark. So if I hit that one and then I hit details, then there's some output here. This output is the output from all this running on the server. So I've configured every student's repository to be verified on the cloud. So notice there's some steps here. Let me see here. Check out the repository code. So it goes in there and it has Git installed on the server too. So then it gets a copy of your source code into a directory on the cloud. And then it builds, I mean, it does other stuff, right? But we're interested in this. It builds the source code, notice, meaning it's going in there and making sure that the source code is working. If it was not working, there would be a red mark here, meaning this code does not compile. I cannot create an executable from it, actually down here on build. And then I can also run some tests for it, okay? How does it know to do this? I've configured it, right? So if everyone has this, and then if you go here, then notice here I'm saying run the 01 data types tests, okay? So that's how it knows. But what I want to show is that we can look at the history of what happens. If I go to actions here, and notice here I have a red mark, meaning when I checked in the examples from Tuesday, there was something wrong. What was wrong? So I can go here, and then I can see let me see here, Clang. I can go here and see what is wrong. So then it's telling me that something was wrong with my test cases. And if you recall, we wrote some test cases for showing that doubles are not very consistent. So this one ran on my computer successfully, but I mean this one, sorry. But when I check it into GitHub, since it has a different CPU, this test case failed, which proves what the C++ guidelines state: don't compare using decimal values. So if you come here, notice right here, failed. So that comparison failed. So what I did is I'm like, okay, so I want my repository to be clean. So I just went in and commented that piece out. So if I come back up here and go back to my repository, and then I go to actions, then notice here I said remove decimal, add test. So if I go here, now everything's happy, and if I go to the test cases, nothing's red. All the test cases are passing. So that's how I'll know if the code that you are checking in is working or not. Okay, so I'll just have to go in here and look for a check mark. If there's no check mark, then there's an X. But more than likely what I'll do is I'll go here to actions, and then I'll just make sure that it's all green. And always remember, green is good. So when I check in this code today, I may get some errors on the cloud because I am comparing with decimals, right? So maybe it doesn't pass on that server over there because their CPU is different than my CPU. I won't know till I send it up there, but if I want to be cautious, then I can just do this. Anywhere I'm comparing decimals, I can just put a comment on them. I wouldn't do this in a real program. Instead, what I would do is I would convert this number to a whole number and this one to a whole number, and then I would do the comparison so that I don't run into this kind of hiccups. Okay, so I come back over here, and one other thing. Okay, let me stop there. Okay,